Hello, welcome to all you first-timers. How nice to have you here. I'm always happy to be here among my people, my community. What a beautiful day, daylight savings time. So on an hour less sleep, I'm going to do my best. The title of my talk today is The Art and Power of Words and Silence. It is amazing what 5 minutes of silence can do, isn't it? I was born a breech baby. The umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. I almost died. Not feet first, butt first. And that was to foreshadow the rest of my life. So I've always been afraid of confined spaces, even being hugged too long or by very large people, and most people are larger than me. I always avoided confined spaces like subways at rush hour and plane flights and closets and attics and basements and caverns and caves and suffocating relationships and being stuck in a belief system without the wherewithal to reconfigure it. The feeling of being trapped in any way, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, would cause me panic. So my birth experience powerfully shaped my outlook on life. Now, the most memorable claustrophobic attack that I had about 35 years ago, I was traveling in the Yucatan, and this was in went to Chichen Itza, and there was a castle that you could go into to see the deity, the jaguar, or I should say jaguar deity, and the passageway was extremely narrow. So on the way in, held your breath and kind of went sideways, and I was kind of okay, but like freaking out, but keeping it under wraps. But then there were people coming back out, and you were chest to chest, or however you could get past them, and I freaked. I mean, I had a full-on panic attack with the breathing and the tears and the crying and the palpitations, the whole thing. I got out, not quickly enough for me, but I got out. The next one that happened was about 20 years ago. I went to Paris, and I was at Montmartre, and I was at Sacré-Cœur, and the girlfriend I had at the time had to go. We went up and through the steeple, and she went up 5 or 8 steps at a time. Would say, "Okay, come on up," because there's no windows. It was just a confined space with these spiral stairs, and I'd go up like holding the side of the wall and because I really wanted to get to the top. I was going to get through this. And I did. I got to the top, but then there was the coming back down. And that was just as challenging as the going back up. So now I relate these stories to you because they have been transformed by the art and power of prayer and meditation. So if the birth experience that planted the claustrophobia in my mind can make me have that kind of an outlook, then I submit that another experience can uproot it, and that of prayer and meditation. The founder of the Unity Church, Charles Fillmore, said, "Prayer is man's steady effort to know God. There is an intimate connection with spirit that logically unites man and his source. Prayers aid us in connecting with source, with illuminating our thoughts, and interwoven feeling that may accompany them. Prayer helps us to realign our lives to the spiritual principles we espouse, and prayer leads me into divine oneness, which is what I ultimately seek. Meditation makes space to receive, to powerfully receive the divine mind. Sitting through the discomfort of sitting, or finding another way of receiving, is for me to seek through divination." Fillmore also said, "We get our most vivid revelations when in a meditative state of mind, and this proves that when we make the mind trustful and confident, we put it in harmony with creative mind. Then its force flows to us in accordance with the law of like attracting like." Prayer and meditation does just that. Individually and together, they are the salve of our individual and collective woundings. Prayer and meditation takes me out from wherever I am, whatever under I am. And it also settles me down when I am over the top. A spiritual mood is created to enhance the experience of prayer and meditation. I like to sit at a quiet place, my altar as it were, and voice my prayers out loud. And the vibration of the voice, the sound, is the covenant that sparks the change within. And the word covenant in the original Latin meaning means coming together. So when I vocalize my prayer, I am coming together with God. Yet mechanical repetition of words does not necessarily create this sanctifying space. It's a really good start. But I need to let God know me, and me know God, becoming one with. Now, we might sculpt our bodies through yoga, and stretching, and strength development and balance. And we can feel or see our bodies that are tight and through muscular contraction or tension, and relieve this through stretching. Or when we're weak, we can support those areas through muscle strengthening. We look into the mirror, happily or not, and we have a trainer, happily or not, that can analyze what is out of balance. And perhaps we experience this feeling of being wobbly when we are standing on one foot. We realize that we are unable to balance. We take action to shape our persons to match the desired effect. And these are the choices that we make when we have a concerted effort to see our actual selves and are confronted with reality. We take these actions because we want to live longer, to live more comfortably in our bodies. And just as we form our bodies, so too can we shape our minds. And by doing this, we look to 4 areas of development that you can sculpt your mind with prayer and meditation. Words. Prayers may be silent, and there are those who believe and enjoy the fruits of audible vibration that impacts our beings as well as others. And those spoken words may be in the form of audible prayer, of affirmation, of chanting and devotional song, singing as we have, all with intention, and dialogue with the divine. I learned to artfully construct my thoughts and words through intention and dialogue. And when in dialogue with others, a form of prayer, what and how I respond, how I say things is incredibly important to this process. And sometimes how I say something is much more important than what I'm saying. There's a wonderful respected author, her name is Sandra Ingerman. She's written a number of books on core shamanism, which is what I'm studying now. And she wrote, "Spiritual traditions teach that words are vibrations and words are used to affect our lives. As children, many of us use the phrase abracadabra. And this actually is an Aramaic phrase, abrak ad habra. And it means, I will create as I speak. So use words throughout the day that remind you of the energy of love. What better way to have living prayer? And these are all the ways that I can sculpt my words. That is an art form. Listen to any brilliant orator, and you know that this is true. Think of Martin Luther King, Maya Angelou. And some may call these beliefs or practices magical thinking. Prayer and meditation lead us into places we cannot otherwise access. Now, another area would be the body itself, learning to become grounded, using breath, pranayama, a prayerful dance, which I love to do. The physicality of yoga, selfless service, drawing mandalas. The Hindus like to do something that's akin to what the Catholics do. The Hindus call it Likita Japa, and it's words of power. And Swami Radha describes this practice of Likita Japa as the written version of repeating a mantra. The mantra is written down in lines like sentences or in shapes and forms. In any design, that will help to reinforce your devotions. And this repetitive writing brings peace, poise, and strength within. The Catholics use Lectio Divina. They take each word and meditate on that word. They contemplate and perhaps write on that word of a prayer, each single word. There are other areas that we can also sculpt, awakening the God within, and this is using the mind. Meditation, visualization, divination, dream work, studying and reading, journaling and self-reflection, mind watch and mindfulness. And finally, in silence, perhaps the heart and spiritual power that we use these tools to chisel our spiritual selves through exercises of the heart. We aim to purify emotions, refining them into divine feelings. And we would do this by practicing gratitude, cultivating patience and faith, surrender and acceptance, unconditional love, and cultivating joy. Silence is power. In an article written in Psychology Today, it says, silence creates self-control and wisdom, the time to reflect before responding. And silence is not only a tool for solitude, but one for use with others. Listening is power. Silence gets you out of the way and creates space for others to fill in with themselves. Silence is artful. Just as with the principle in design, the use of negative space, we can use silence to highlight the space that is filled. The balance between negative space and positive space enhances the design. It gives the eye a place to rest. And musicians use negative space with periods of silence in a musical piece, giving the ear a place to rest. This appealing subtlety can be used in our design for daily living through prayer and meditation. Of course, selfless service, practicing compassion, creates a life of fulfillment and satisfaction and great joy. And these traditions are found in every religion, in every part of the world, in some form or another. Now, what I'm about to tell you comes from an excerpt from NPR. Scientists research what happened in the brains and bodies of people who believe they connect with the divine. It's called neurotheology. The American and Canadian scientists found that the brains of people who spend untold hours in prayer and meditation are different. Dr. Newberg says that the more you focus on something, whether it's math or auto racing or football or God, the more that becomes your reality, the more it becomes written into the neural connections of your brain. In other words, the more you spend time in that practice of meditation, of shaping your relationship to oneness, the more real your connection becomes with it. Michael Boehm is a doctor at the University of Pennsylvania, and he's a Tibetan Buddhist who has meditated at least an hour a day for the past 40 years. Tall order. During a peak meditative experience, Boehm says he feels oneness with the universe, and time slips away. He explains that as if the present moment expands to fill all of eternity, that there has never been anything but this eternal now. And when Boehm meditated in Newberg's brain scanner, his brain mirrored those same feelings. As expected, his frontal lobes lit up on the screen. Meditation is sheer concentration, after all, but what fascinated Newberg was that Boehm's parietal lobes went dark. Dr. Newberg explains what this means. The parietal lobes in this area that normally take our sensory information tries to create for us a sense of ourselves and orient that self in the world. But we have found activity decreases in that area when people lose their sense of self, feel a sense of oneness, a blurring of the boundary between self and others. Now, if this is not a powerful, artful experience, then I don't know what is. And Newberg found that result was not only with Boehm, but also with other monks he scanned. It was the same when he imaged the brains of Franciscan nuns praying and Sikhs chanting. They all felt the same oneness with the universe. And when it comes to the brain, Newberg says, spiritual experience is spiritual experience. There is no Christian, there is no Jewish, there is no Muslim. It's all just one. But there is hope for those of us who don't have that much time to spend in meditation. Neuroscientist Richard Davidson says you can change your brain with experience and training. You can sculpt your brain just as you'd sculpt your muscles if you went to the gym. Our brains are continuously being sculpted whether you like it or not, wittingly or unwittingly. So if we can sculpt our brains, we can sculpt our lives, our perspectives, our surroundings, and therefore prayer and meditation is artful. And it's called neuroplasticity. He said there were detectable changes in the subject's brains within 2 weeks. Another similar study where employees at a high-tech firm meditated a few minutes a day over a few weeks produced more dramatic results. Just 2 months' practice among rank amateurs led to a systematic change in both the brain as well as the immune system in more positive directions. For example, they developed more antibodies to a flu virus than did their colleagues who did not meditate. The magic of Abracadabra, I will create as I speak, or maybe I will create as I pray and meditate. So for those who don't believe in the power of words and silence, they may not have tried it at all, or enough. But from my own experience, prayer and meditation have proved to be an invaluable, beneficial tool of spiritual progress. Let me tell you of another claustrophobic concern. About 10 years ago, I got breast cancer, and there was a battery of diagnostic tests, one of which was an MRI, a tube that you're rolled into. And there's this sound, all this sound that goes on and on and on interminably. And I had to go into that tube. And my friend Rich, who's my father figure since my father passed, was with me. And he said, after I expressed my concern, he said, you know, I had to go through something like that once. Want to know how I got through it? I said, yeah, sure, let's hear it. He said, 56 Hail Marys. Well, when I heard that, I was like, hold on, I'm no longer a practicing Catholic. Our Father is not in my lexicon. But a Hail Mary, I could peel those puppies off 1, 2, 6. So as I was in this tube, facing down, I started to say these Hail Marys, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, and so on and so on. And I didn't really count, I just kept doing it. And the next thing I knew, the claustrophobia was simply lifted. It was lifted. It was inexplainable, but it was quite explainable. So words matter and they don't matter. Universe connects and understands. And how many times have I repeated a Sanskrit phrase at a yoga class and I don't have a clue what it means? But it's a one-pointed focus with an intention. And that hurls me into a prayerful, meditative state. And of course, there are no words needed to find that state. In fact, silence might be the most relevant. I can remember back in the 80s, there were tranquility tanks or flotation tanks. They also called them deprivation tanks. They were the big trend. They were essentially boxes that were closed and filled with highly salinated water so you could float, because I sink like a rock. So I got into this tank, and it's complete darkness and complete silence. And everything was silent except my mind, because I was freaking out in there. Every possible, snakes were in there and all kinds of course they're not in there, but in my brain, this is what was going on. So all the fears came up. Now, some people cannot be silent or in a room without some sound. People who have the TV continually going, or the music on, or the radio, or the internet, or something, the vibration from those devices cuts into any true serenity. Silence is a force all on its own, and it has shaped me into a calmer individual. And I'll tell you how. Recently, I was very cheerfully reminded of the power of prayer and meditation, because I've had this neck problem that needed to be diagnosed. Turns out I have cervical stenosis and arthritis, but to find that out, I had to have an MRI. This again. And this time, my head was clamped into a medical device before they rolled me into this tube. Now, my eyes were closed, and when the machine began, I opened my eyes, and the top of the tube was about 10 inches away. And I laid there, and I waited for my heart to start racing and my palms to get sweaty and so on, but nothing. There was no negative response. I was even able to sleep the night before. So over these past 10 years or so, it's remained lifted, claustrophobia. And I didn't even try. It's just been lifted. So I thought about all this prayer and meditation, how it saves and it soothes me through any sense of panic, revealed through claustrophobia, of course, but any other inordinate fear doesn't even come up. But let us also remember that prayer and meditation are not necessarily a corrective fix for a lack or a deficiency. The art and power of words and of silence can be celebratory, to celebrate the connection rather than a virtual pill for an ill. Prayer and meditation are tools to know oneself better and to know God within, to journey to the near and distant inner worlds we all have. We can shape how we see others, ourselves, even the way we perceive God. And as we give ourselves over to the art and power of words and silence, we become more able and willing to delve deeper. And what better way to experience God? I encourage you, I urge you to take the time. Give yourself a powerful gift of art. The ability to think through your words, to speak your truth to God, to yourself, to shape your mindful habits. Give yourself a break from the positive space to enjoy the best of the negative space, the restful place. Give yourself the gift of art and power, of silence and words, through meditative silence, and open a world waiting to be written with your spiritual penmanship. Put your signature on your soul. And so it is.